All right, in this lesson, we're going to be looking at the operating section of the statement of cash flows. We're going to actually give you an introduction to it, to the operating activities. And then after we do this lesson, we'll actually show you how we prepare it using one of the two methods that we're going to explain in this lesson. So this lesson is really to help you understand a nuance to the operating section of the statement of cash flows. And once you have that nuance down, we're going to look at one of those methods in the next lesson. So it's important to kind of understand this stuff so that if you had to do it, you would know which way you would prepare the statement of cash flows. So let's talk about the operating section of the statement of cash flow. So a little bit of overview here, or review of what you already know. The operating activity section represents all the cash inflows and outflows that directly relate to revenues and expenses reported on the income statement. And so what I often say is it represents the day-to-day activities of a business with their customers, their suppliers, the employees, their landlords, and any other vendors that they deal with. What do they do on a daily basis to make money? That is what would go in to the operating section of the statement of cash flows, okay? Now, the operating activities section of the statement of cash flows can be prepared in one of two ways. So when we're looking at how do we prepare the statement of cash flows, the next question goes, how do we prepare the operating section? We've got two ways of doing that, and accountants can use either way. They're both appropriate for GAAP. So the first way of preparing the operating activities section is using the indirect method, which we'll explain in a few minutes. And then the other way that we can prepare this operating section of the statement of cash flows is using the direct method. So we've got the indirect method and the direct method. Now, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter which one you use because they're both going to get to the same answer. So basically, at the end of the day, it's not the only difference between these two is how we get to that final answer. Net cash used or received in the due to the operating activities of the business. So both of them will get the same answer. The question is, how do we get there? Using the indirect method or the direct method. Now, it's also important to note that the operating section is the only section in which we have two methods to reporting the cash flow statement. All other sections are prepared the same way. So all other sections are prepared the same way, regardless if it's indirect or direct method for the operating section. So there is no indirect or direct method for the investing or financing section of the statement of cash flows. It's either indirect or direct for the operating activities, and then the rest it's prepared the same way. So we're going to spend a little bit of time helping you understand one of these methods for the operating, and then we're just going to show you investing and financing because it doesn't matter if you use the indirect or the direct method, they're prepared the same way. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this direct method. So the direct method reports the total cash in and cash out based on the actual transactions which cash originates from. So what we're saying is we're basically just going to take any cash transactions and we're going to dump it into either cash in or cash out. That's it. So any revenue cash in, we would report revenues cash in, total amount. Expenses, cash out. It's not always this easy, but it seems that expenses, cash out, and we're done. Okay. So that's what the direct method does. Direct cash in, direct cash out. Now the difference between the two, so the cash in and the cash out, will give you net cash received, or if it's in parentheses, used by operating activities. And you'll see that when we start doing the operating section, or when we start doing the statement of cash flows, is if we have a no bracket number, that means cash received. If we have a bracket number, that means cash used. So that's how we would do the direct method. Cash in, cash out. The net, hopefully it's positive, would give us the net cash received by operating activities. So that is the direct method. Now, the thing about the direct method is that most companies don't actually use the direct method. And you would think, okay, direct method, it's directly getting into cash, which means it would be easier, but that's not the case. So most companies don't necessarily use the direct method. And in this section, we're not going to teach you the direct method. We're only going to teach you the indirect method because that's what companies most often use. So let's talk about the indirect method for a minute here. Indirect method starts with the net income. So we take the net income from the income statement, and then we reconcile that net income for items that do not involve cash and for changes in current assets and liabilities that affect cash. So basically all we're going to do here on the indirect method is we're going to go straight to the income statement, pull off the net income, put that at the very top, and then make adjustments to it until we get to the bottom where we get cash received or used by the operating activities of the company. So that's what we're going to do here, and it becomes very easy if you know the steps. Now, the indirect method is the most common method used when preparing the operating activities section, just because it just makes sense. When you do it, it just makes sense. All you need is the balance sheet and the income statement, and pulling off numbers or doing some analysis there could get you to the statement of cash flows very easily than having to sift through a whole bunch of cash ins and cash outs to get to your net cash provided or used by your operating activities of the company. So this is the most often used, and that's what we're going to spend some time on. So that is the operating section, kind of the underlying understanding of the operating section. In the next lesson, we're going to be taking a look at the indirect method and starting to help you understand the calculations of preparing that operating section using that indirect method. So until then, we'll see you in the next video. Hey guys, if you like this video, make sure you press the like button below. And if you're looking for worksheets that go along with all of these lessons, head over to my website at patrickleemsa.com or clicking the link in the far right. And I've got your next lesson right over here. So just click that link and it'll take you to that video. So until then, we'll see you in the next lesson.